Hello and welcome to Tech with NK. Today we're looking at CS50's Introduction to Programming with Python, and we're trying to solve problem set 2, specifically the exercise just setting up my Twitter. That said, let's look into the exercise and see what we have to do. So in this exercise, we're expected to create a Python file. We call it twitter.py. This file is supposed to get input from the user as a string and then return the user's input omitting all vowels, that's A, E, I, O, or U, whether inputted in uppercase or in lowercase, so it shouldn't really matter. And if we look at this demo, we'll see that when we run our Python file, if the user enters Twitter, we're supposed to remove this E and I to return this. And if the user enters a sentence like what's your name, we're supposed to return this to remove the A here, the O and the U from here, and the A and the E from here. If that's clear enough, I'm just going to open VS Code in my computer and show you how to do this. In VS Code, I'm going to start by creating the directory we're going to work with. I'll call it Twitter. My directory has been created. I'm going to change directories into that. Then I'm going to create the Python file twitter.py. And our file has been created for us. So I'm going to close this terminal and Explorer. Start by saving this file. And in this Python file, we'll start by getting input from the user. So say get input from, let me remove this, the user. I'm going to save this user's input in a variable or call it user input and use the input function or pass a string to it or say input. Okay, that's to save the user's input. I don't need to modify anything with the user's input for now. Having saved the user's input in the variable user input, there are a number of ways that we can remove the vowels from this input. I tried a few, but I'm just going to show you the shortest that I found. So I'll start by creating a variable or call it vowels. And in this variable, I'm going to save the different vowels I know, that's A, E, I, O, U in uppercase and in lowercase. That's to make sure if the user enters a variable, or rather if the user's input contains uppercase or lowercase vowels, we'll be able to remove it or to deal with it. Then I'm going to use a for loop or say for vowel in vowels, yes. And what will I do? I'm going to modify the user's input using the replace method. That's a string method. I'm going to say user input will be equal to user input dot replace. Let me remove this. Dot replace. What am I replacing? I'm replacing any vowel I find with an empty string. So what is this going to do? Let's say, for example, the user enters something like Twitter. Okay. Now, I'm going to pass over the user's input, or rather, I'm going to iterate over these vowels. And while I'm iterating over the vowels, I'm going to look for any vowel in the user's input. In this case, there's an I and an E. And so this for loop is going to get this I and remove it and replace it with an empty space. And it's also going to get the E, remove this E and replace it with an empty space. And that's it. Why I'm iterating over the vowels rather than iterating over the user's input is because in this case, yes, the user's input is actually short. But what if the user's input is a very long sentence? Let me just enter this stuff here. You see that it will take a longer time to iterate over the user's input compared to iterating over the vowels. So I prefer iterating over the vowels. So if I remove this, and now that we've removed all the vowels from the user's input, I can go ahead and print. I'm going to print this as an F string or just say output. Yes. And then what am I printing? I'm printing the user's input. So I should be in here again, user input. And this code should work just fine. Let me remove this or save this one more time. Then I'm going to open my terminal and I'm going to test the code together to see how it performs. Start by clearing this to make things a little bit tidy. Then we're going to run the Python file twitter.py. In this file, we're going to test it, let's say Twitter. Yep. And as we see, the user or the code has been able to remove from the user's input the I and the E. Let's try something else. Let's say today. Oh, I have to run that again. Let's say today is a good day. And we see the O and the A from today has been removed. The I from is, A, the O's from here. In fact, we see our code works just fine. And I believe that's good enough. The code is short, it's clear, it's understandable. We've come to the end of our video. And before we separate, I'd like to remind you that this is just one method out of many that could solve this problem. There are a few that I also tried and that did the same job like this replace method. However, I found them a little bit too long. And I invite you to check out the Python documentation to see some of these methods. If you have any questions, I invite you to leave them in the comment section below and I'll be pleased to answer you. If you loved this video, please support the channel by hitting the like and subscribe buttons so you won't miss any upcoming content. That said, have a good day.